Hi, everybody. How are you? Woohoo! That was enthusiastic. How are you? Yeah, we're in for something this evening. I wanted to start this evening by talking about just what we're going to be doing tonight. And the panel goal is to identify and understand the disconnect between the things we want and our ability to achieve the things we want. And we're going to learn tonight some strategies for shifting to the mindset of abundance. But this workshop is not an abundance workshop. It's called a scarcity mindset workshop. So this is the first time I think that I've been a moderator where the subject is what we would consider something that is negative, something that we aren't aware of all the time, of what like a monster under the bed, something we don't see all the time. And so we're going to really spend a lot of time defining what this is and how we got it so we can shine the flashlight under the bed and get rid of this monster. So I'd like to introduce you to our panelists tonight who are going to help us do that. And first, to my right here, we have Amelia Zhivotovskaya. Good. And you want to go ahead. Let's introduce each other one by one. So go ahead and share with us a little bit about what you do, who you are, and why you think you were invited to this talk today.
My name is Amelia, and I'm a recovering scarcity mindset. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we all are. Hi, everyone.
Amelia.
It's so good to meet you. I am a positive psychology-based life coach and teacher, so I hold a master's in positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm also a doctorate student in mind-body medicine. So I spend almost all of my time working with people's mindsets, with people's belief systems. As a coach, we see scarcity mindset show up not just around financials, but around every element of people's lives. And so as a researcher, as a scientist, I kind of straddle these boats between looking at what is coming out in research about how the mind works, how the body works. And when we can understand these things, we can become more empowered ourselves. And then I straddle the other side of actually helping people apply the science in their day-to-day life. I'm a teacher, I'm a speaker, and also practice a lot of body-oriented things like yoga and movement.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And immediately to her right is Betsy Capes of Capes Coaching.
Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm the president of Capes Coaching. We do, is this working? Yeah, you can hear me okay. We do career coaching for actors, artists, and all types of creative professionals. I'm a certified life and career coach. And I'm really excited to be here because I feel like this is at the heart of almost every conversation I've had in the last 10 years coaching actor, dancer, writer, director, performer, photographer, you name it. And I think that I kind of love that we're facing this and addressing it and looking at it and not jumping right to the solution, because that is exactly how we like to work. Everything we do is based on awareness before action and really getting a sense of, where are you with this? And so looking at what is your relationship to scarcity? I'm excited to explore that before we find the solution. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Betsy. And then right over to her right is David Maurice Sharp with the Thriving Artist Investments Club.
Yeah, I'm David. I was a modern dancer for many years. And I also worked in the financial world during that time and after that, most recently in corporate restructurings. And one of the things I found was that most of the financial investing information that's out there isn't really geared towards us, people in the arts. It's geared towards those people that have full-time jobs and a 401k and all the rest of the stuff. So I've began teaching workshops in how artists can relate to their investments and find ways to actually have their finances start to work for them, even with limited amounts of money, and at the same time while you're dealing with the feast and famine mentality. So I continue to do that. I also am really pleased to have a book that's being published next year by Taylor and Francis, the Focal Group, which is specifically about how artists can invest.
And last but certainly not least, we have Josh Pace. See, I spent the whole time getting everyone's name, and then I was like, overlooked your very simple four-letter
It's all
name.
about consistency.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving that to me, Josh. Mwah.
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. I'm an actor, and I've been teaching something called Committed Impulse for many years, and I assume that's why I was invited here. One aspect of Committed Impulse is to get present, and it's to catch when you go into a series of mental thought loops and come up with ways to kind of snap out of them. And as I've been thinking about what a scarcity mindset is, I think on some level it's a series of thoughts that I know when I'm in it, it's a series of thoughts that I'll indulge in. So I'm really interested I've always been interested to see how can we step out of those thought loops. So I'm here to learn and offer whatever I can.
Great. Okay, so just like we're going to touch on where this scarcity mindset comes from throughout the whole night, but I want to talk about just briefly as we get into the first question is that this is what we call, quote, a problem. But just like any creative endeavor that we all take, and certainly you guys as actors, when you first get into the production, you don't know what's going to happen. You have no answers. You have to figure them all out. So you technically have a problem you have to solve. If you were in a marketing strategy, you come up with, what are we going to do? That's the problem. How are we going to solve it? So we're really going to just look at this like a problem that's solvable. So let's get that right out there, and let's just talk. First question: what are the common characteristics of a scarcity mindset? How does this way of thinking affect our thoughts and our actions? Anyone?
You have the best education.
I was educated right here at the New School University.
I was going to say I'm the only idiot that paid a lot of money for this kind of stuff. I'm just kidding. Well, no, I was going to piggyback off of what you said. I think so often people use the word mindset and we don't actually know what we're talking about. So you see it a lot like positive mindset or work on your mindset, but what is an actual mindset? And one of the ways we think about it in psychology is that a thought is something you think once in a while. And then if you keep repeating a thought again and again, you start to believe the thought. So the thought becomes a belief, and over time it becomes a mindset. And so in order to be able to identify your mindset, one of the ways you can start to peek underneath that bed is to start to look at what are the types of thoughts that you have. And knowing your own mind chatter and your thoughts can help you get a better sense of what is my mindset as it relates to things that, let's say, money, or let's say relationships. And so you can begin catching your mindset by also noticing your emotions. So things that make you contract, give you that icky feeling in your heart, in your belly, and all those other places in your throat. And tying that into, what did I just think to myself? I'm not good enough. Oh, this person could do it, but I can't do that. Or if only I were blankety blank enough. Those types of thoughts are the constructs for what the mindset is made of. And when we look at what it actually looks like in the brain, it's not that you have, a certain area of it's like, oh, there it is. There's that scarcity mindset. It's lighting up in, T4. It's a series of thoughts, and they become neural networks in your brain that when you start to repeat these thoughts again and again, they wire, or they don't actually touch, but they come closer together, and it becomes like a network of behaviors, feelings, and thoughts that relate to that particular thing. It's not just any one thought. It's not in any one region of the brain, but as you start to explore it, you can start to shift it.
So in terms of the money issue and these if-only thoughts, let's go to you, David. Like the if only I had more time, I'd have more money. If only I had more education and knowledge, I'd have more, Go ahead.
Right, yeah, I was going to say, I think that when you talk about scarcity and money, that's something that all of us can relate to pretty much all the time, right? Because we always feel like we never have enough. There isn't ever enough, and how do we get more of it? I think, as Melissa mentioned, I was a member of the Thriving Artists Investment Club for many years, which was a group of people in the arts who formed an investment club to learn about investing. And the first year we had, for one of our summer meetings, we decided to have a picnic in the park. And rather than really conduct club business, we wanted to talk about what finances meant to us as artists and what the issues were we had as artists. And a lot of really interesting things came up, which I'm sure some of you have felt. One is this idea that as artists, we shouldn't have money, right? We should always be poor, because it's only out of being poor and struggling are you going to have really good art come out of that, which is rubbish. That's completely ridiculous, right?
Thanks for calling it rubbish.
The other thing, yeah, exactly. The other thing is that if you make a lot of money doing your art, it must not be very good art, right? It must be too commercial, which again is rubbish. That's ridiculous that we think, but that is part of how we're taught to think, right? So a lot of what we need to try to do is to sort of get away from that mentality. Now, the odds are stacked a little bit against us because the information that's out there isn't geared towards us, right? So you have two jobs that you have to do. First, you have to understand what it is that you're supposed to be investing in. You have to figure that part out, which nobody's taught, whether you're an artist or not. People aren't taught how to do that. And then once you understand what it is, you have to translate that into how it applies to you as an artist and how it can help you in your art. So those, I think, are some of the biggest problems that artists face in terms of their finances.
And for you, Betsy, like you probably see this a lot with your coaching, like if I only got rid of this problem, then, I could have made it big already. Talk a little bit about that scarcity mindset there.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is like flip it, and without going too much into the solution. But,
yeah, you can.
But I will. Usually when we're so stuck in it, and I love hearing the science behind it, I love it, it's so great. Most people come to coaching already deep in that vicious cycle. So one of the things that, I see all the time, people come and say, well, tell me what else I should be doing. What else could I be doing to get closer to my goals? And that energy already, you can feel the scarcity in the what should I be doing? And we go right to being, and that's what coaching's all about. Well, how are you being? How are you feeling about your goals? And if we can address that first and solve that, the doing is actually quite, you can envision where you're going and you can follow through there. So usually we have to really first get a clear, honest look at what is that scarcity thought? What is that belief that's holding you back? And how do we flip it, and flip it to what are the gifts of the circumstances of my situation that feel dire? My survival job. That's one of the things I see a lot of people feeling really trapped in. If only I didn't have to work this job, then I'd have more time for my career. Actually, how is this job supporting your career? And what is it about this that's making, your career more possible? And if you can get deep into that and appreciate it, find a way to find the love for it, for as long as you're in it, chances are you can slowly but surely get closer to your goals.
That sounds great. And then, Josh, just for you, you get a lot of actors that you're training, and what about the people that are saying, I'm working hard, I'm doing everything I need to do, why isn't it happening for me?
Well, one thing that I think is really an interesting to look at, as well as what the thoughts are that emerge, is also what triggers those thoughts to start. And what I've found is that things we're kind of going along. Most of the time, I think everybody at one time or another, no matter how wealthy or poor they are, will be in a scarcity mindset. And some of the richest people that I've met have a scarcity mindset. So I don't think it's connected to finance. But what I've found is we're going along and everything's fine, and then there's times where we fall into what we'll call our scarcity mindset. And what I've found is what tends to trigger us to go into a thought loop of any kind is when we experience a sensation, a body sensation, or an emotion that we have a low tolerance for. So if we're comfortable, chances are we'll be more engaged with what's in front of us. We start to feel some discomfort. We try to get rid of it, and then that triggers us into our head. And if in your mindset you have your scarcity thoughts, like they will pop in as a way to disengage from the sensation that you're experiencing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, that's good.
And I mean, and that's why I put parentheses around the word problem here, because we have to take the negative connotation and thereby release the negative feelings that are attached to this thing when we enter it, and see how it can be a tool that points us in the direction of what we want. Like Betsy was saying, if we know what we don't want, then we certainly do know what we do want, if we look at it that way. So let's talk about, just briefly, where it comes from. How does our upbringing affect our mindset? Families that come from great wealth tend to, even if they lose their fortune, will gain it again because they feel entitled to it. And if you came from, say, a blue-collar home, where work ethic was, you have to go to work every day no matter what, and if you're not doing that, then you don't deserve anything. Where do we get these? How does our upbringing affect our scarcity mindset?
Can I just say something to the problem, which was the thing right beforehand, before we jump there?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I want to highlight that it's like we're talking about mindset being the problem, but thoughts are just thoughts at the end of the day. It's not the thought that's the problem, or even so much the mindset that's the problem. It's that our thoughts affect our feelings, which affect our actions. And in psychology, we talk all the time about this concept of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And your thoughts and your beliefs become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if a person believes I don't have what it takes, that affects their actions, meaning they don't try, they don't put themselves out there, which affects their results, which then reinforces their belief, which reinforces their actions and their results. So I want to just really highlight that as related to the problem, that we want to go to the mindset because that's like the seed, but really the problem is the domino effect that gets created when we perpetuate self-fulfilling prophecies.
Excellent. I mean, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
And just to tack on to that domino effect, it leads us to a place of not feeling like we're at choice, like we don't have options. And that's when I know I'm in scarcity, is when I feel like there are no other options. This is the only way it's going to be. And that's the belief, the mindset. And it leads me to a place of not being able to live in possibility. So that's where we try to get you back to in coaching and in the work that we all do, I think, yeah.
So how does how we were created, how we were raised, how does that play into this?
I'll just briefly say, I think, it has a deep impact on the expectations that we place on ourselves to arrive somewhere by a certain time. And in an industry like the arts, where there is no one way to have success in this business, and there's no rule book that you get when you graduate, if you do go to school, and you don't even have to necessarily have training to do this. I think that it's really easy to fall into a scarcity mindset of, if it hasn't happened by now, whatever now is, 2 years, 1 year, 3 months, if I haven't gotten somewhere by a certain time, then it's too late, and I missed the boat, or now I'm, and then we fall into all the other possible mindsets that, can set us back.
I know for me, I grew up on 7th Street between Avenue C and D. It was called, Alphabet City when I was growing up. And it was, there were a lot of artists there. And if anybody made any money, they had to go on a binge, like an alcoholic binge, blow it as fast as possible. Money was bad. This was in that culture. Money was bad. Money killed creativity. And I know for me, it took me, I still have that. I can still access those thoughts. I found some ways to keep working and not let it be my downfall. But I think, as a kid, if you're around people that have a scarcity mindset, it's just very easy to, we're just learning, we're absorbing. And so I think that's, I know for me, that's how I picked it up.
And I would just say, from the financial point of view, I think if you come from a wealthy family or a family that's used to dealing with money as opposed to one that's maybe less so, I think one thing you would gain from that is maybe a little less fear about understanding what investing is, but I don't think it really affects you as much as your own sort of attitude towards life with the scarcity. I've known people who were from wealthy families and had trust funds who felt that they had to pretend that they were poor because they were in the arts and really put on this facade of, living with 100 roommates and the whole 9 yards so that nobody would know that they actually had all this money. And you just think they're insane. What is the matter with them? Why not take advantage of that and go with it? So I think it's really, while coming from being around wealth a lot may acclimate you a little bit more to what it can do for you, I still think it really comes down to what you're thinking and what you're allowing yourself to believe that you can do that's really affecting it.
Well, so maybe we've covered this, but did you want to add something too? Yeah.
Just briefly, one of the most exciting things that's come out in psychology research over the past few decades is actually that childhood is overrated. So I just want to throw that out there. You're like, yeah, isn't that a breath of fresh air? And just what that means is while there is a strong element of like what childhood influences play, the kind of messages we get, recent research shows that it is a little overrated, meaning we can change. And just a few decades ago, we didn't think that was as possible, so then it was more important. And then the other thing that I think happens a lot, if the kind of messages as a child, if you hear the scarcity messages, like I was born in Ukraine, my family immigrated here when I was 5.5, and my parents, we always got by somehow, but I heard a lot of, we don't have enough money, we don't have any money. And when you're like 5 and 6, you're kind of like, oh, well, I'm only 5 or 6, but I know you kind of need money in this world, and you keep saying we don't have any, and that's kind of scary. And so the messages, they affect us because they are things we internalize, but from an energetic perspective, if you're familiar with the energy body, it's very unrooting. So the root chakra is what people use to feel centered and feel safe and like, I have a right to be here and the world is safe. And when you hear those sort of like very unnerving messages when you're a kid, it does kind of leave this little bit of a scarring. It doesn't mean you'll be scarred for the rest of your life, but it is the sense of like you internalize, well, the world's not a safe place, or we don't have enough. And so it can leave in these little scars, but they're not there forever. We heal really well as human beings. We're very resilient.
Yay. So we kind of just brought it up, Josh brought it up, this sense that money is bad or that having money is bad. And some of us, like all of us would say, well, I don't think that, but all of us have had those times where we do sort of, like the sellout. I was talking earlier with Melissa, and I was talking to Bradley Cooper in this room right here, and he had done Alias, and he came back for a workshop with a bunch of people, and everybody was sort of just steering away from him and, looking down because he had already reached some notoriety and some fame. And he came over to me and said, "Why isn't anyone looking at me? Did I sell out?" And because we had studied all these masters and Shakespeare and everything, and here he was working on a Ridley Scott show, and he actually asked to be removed from the show. That's how he was taken off, because he felt like a sellout making a big paycheck. So let's talk about that, which I said to him, no, you're famous, and he was like, oh, okay. But so how do our negative thoughts in relationship with money affect our scarcity mindset? And is it hidden? Or do we acknowledge it? And why not? Or, yeah. Anyone? Well, David might, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I've already said, a lot of what we think as artists, or what we're taught to think, is that you shouldn't have money and that it's something that's bad, which I don't agree with at all. I think that one of the things that if you sort of learn to put your finances in some kind of order to whatever extent you can, so that they start helping you, it gives you choice in your art, which is great. So you can take a high-paying job, or you can take a job that doesn't pay you anything. As a modern dancer, there were many times that I got to work with choreographers doing their signature pieces and made nothing doing it. And it was some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done, as opposed to, going and doing, dressing up as a bumblebee for Macy's flower show and, making money doing that. So I think that there's something very positive, and yes, I did audition. No, I didn't do it. Tap shoes and all. So I think that.
Could you show us a little?
I will not. Not unless they start passing tequila. So I think one of the things that you have to think about when you look at finances is that it's not something that you necessarily have to understand tomorrow. Okay? It's if you think about your approach to your art form, and I'm going to use dance as the example. I never thought going in and taking one dance class that I was going to be a professional dancer in a professional company, right? The idea was that I was going to have to take class every day of my life, do 7 bazillion tendus and pliés to get to the point where I was going to be able to be a professional, and then I had to stay on top of that and keep doing that. Stop looking at your finances as if I have to get it right now or I can't do it. Just do one little piece at a time. I always tell people in my workshops, if each month you just say, I'm going to do one thing this month that is going to help me with my finances, whether it's look up what a mutual fund is or a mutual fund I want to invest in, or finding a treasury bond to buy or something like that, just one thing, you will start building it and making it a part of your life, just like everything else. And then it can start to work for you. And you don't need a lot to do that. But then when you start to get a lot of it, you'll be able to say, hey, now I've got this, so maybe I have a little cushion to do some of the things that I'd rather do that maybe aren't going to pay me as much.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think our relationship to money brings up this idea of worthiness and also, value, what our value is, the value that we bring to a project, to an audition, to a meeting, if you're pitching a show, to a network. And I think that it's really easy to make assumptions about whatever your current financial standing is. So I'm so glad there are companies and organizations that support artists with this that I didn't know were around 10 years ago when I started coaching. I think it's fantastic. And I think that ultimately how you assess and really track your own self-worth and how related that is to your income is something really important to understand and have the awareness around. We do a lot of goal setting in the work that we do, and I encourage all types of artists to set financial goals if that's something that inspires you and motivates you. If that's something that if that's not something that it fuels you, that you're excited about, then don't focus on that. Focus on what does. But I think that it's easy to tie in, it's almost natural to tie in our financial, whatever we're making from our art to our worth and our value. I was just working with someone today, and we were talking about this with Twitter, with followers, that she's like, it's all about my value is how many followers I have. And it was so frustrating. And we really talked about the difference between quality, not quantity, And I think that that's important to look at. And I would say focus on finding a way to make the money you need to make to get to a comfortable place within yourself. And that may end up being, I also coached somebody who took a sabbatical from the business, and he just went into his day job and he saved up a ton of money, paid off all his debt, and now he's like soaring with his comedy career because he took that time off to really get more comfortable and make the money he needed to make. So I think it's a personal choice, but you do want to know where you are with it.
I don't want to get too much, and I echo everything that everyone has said, and the role of value and worthiness. It's like, it's at that root level, as we were talking about, like, I have a right to be here. I don't have to earn my stay. I'm worthy. I don't want to get too much into techniques because I know we're going to talk problem solving and later on. And it feels really important to just say that when you look at the relationship to money, being able to understand what your belief systems are is really key. So one of the techniques that I use with my clients is basically asking them to write down and think through what your beliefs are about how things work. So how does money work? And you can do money doesn't grow on trees, money is the root of all evil, money is a wonderful thing, the more money I have, the more I can do with it. And just being able to put out what are all of your beliefs about this particular thing, or how does this work? How does the acting industry work? How does it work to get an agent? Like all of these, really at the end of the day, they're all different mindsets. And the tricky thing about mindsets is we think that ours is the way that things are. So if your belief system is, money corrupts you, and again, this could be just one small thought out of a whole fountain of other thoughts that you have. But if you have that belief, we call it the attention bias of the brain, you will actually see more evidence for that particular belief around you. And so in order to be able to bust loose from the scarcity mindset, it's really important to understand that it's just your mindset. And being able to surround yourself with other people who have a different way of seeing the world is one small remedy. But you can't really do that until you know your own stuff. So and the key to resilience, which is the one that we did before. So shameless plug for the recording that they have for
you will see
the previous one around resilience. The key to resilience is actually being able to be flexible in your thinking. So anytime you get caught like this is the only way things are, it's unhealthy. It stops you from being resilient. So when you look at these things, it's important to say, like even being in a room with other people wanting to work on your scarcity mindset, you'll be like, see, the world is scarce, right? Or you could say, see, look, all these people are fascinated by this topic, right? But the way that we perceive it is going to be the way that we act it.
Well, yeah.
I just want to just back up what you're saying with just a little story for me. I don't know, it was probably about 12 years ago. I was doing a movie called Safe Men, which I highly recommend. And prior to that movie, I would get an acting job, and then there'd be like a big dip, and then I would get another acting job, and then there would be another big dip. And my belief system was that that's how it had to be, that's just that's how it works. And I remember we were getting dressed. It was Sam Rockwell, Mark Ruffalo, Paul Giamatti, and Steve Zahn and myself were in the movie, and we're getting dressed, and I started hearing them. They were just like, everybody was chit-chatting, and they were just talking about, I'm doing this movie, and then as soon as that's done, I'm going to this movie, and then I'm doing that movie. And I'd just never been exposed, like you're saying, I'd never really been exposed to that was a concept that you could work steadily. And that made a real impact on me, and it really, since then I really have worked quite steadily, and it was a real turning point. So I just want to.
Yep. Well, it's expected in our society that there's this arbitrary ladder of success that we have to climb, and there's phases and stages that you have to go through. So let's talk about that for a minute. That like that's the way it is, and I'm never gonna, until I do this, then I have to do this, then I have to do this, and we are in a business where it doesn't necessarily happen very linearly. So let's talk about that. The people that say you got to work and you got to work hard, and that's the way it is, versus just setting your own path.
Yeah, I think I actually think, like I said before, there's absolutely no one way to do this, and it's actually your responsibility. It's all of our responsibilities to run our business and to find the love for what it means to get organized and map out what your vision is for your life and your career, and how and what you want to work towards. And I tend to see a lot of vague kind of, I just want to be working, I want to be working. And I think that's a fine starting point, but we got to move to more specificity. And we have to, the more clear you get about what exactly does working mean for you, because I mean, if we took the time that we don't have to go through each one of you and figure out how do you define working, for some people it would be the amount of money you make. For some people it would be, consistency. For other people it would be working at this theater company or on, this set, or, writing, for this network or whatever it may be. And I think that we owe it to ourselves. I mean, as a business owner, as a small business owner, I don't know where we'd be if we didn't sit down and take stock and say, okay, what's our, making sure that our actions and our day-to-day and our week-to-week and month-to-month are lined up with our ultimate career vision. That's a starting point, and everybody's looks different. That's what's so beautiful and amazing, that no one has the same vision. You may start with the same idea, but we're all so unique. And I think also life and art come together in this industry. And things certainly don't, I see everything but the linear path. Yeah. And the more we expect the linear, the more disappointed we are. And I think that can lead to the scarcity. It didn't go the way that I thought, therefore it's not going. And I can't tell you how many times I see people set certain goals, maybe not get those, but get other ones they didn't even know were possible, and come back with amazing success stories about, literally I was working with a musician, and she had a goal, a 1-year goal to finish up her album, recording her album, and one of her big we do a big desire rant of everything you want in your life, and she wrote down, I'd love to sing, with Sting one day. And she literally, within 3 months, was singing backup for Sting. I'm not kidding you. She still is working with him, and yes. it's a great reminder that these things are possible and they're out there. And even if we don't initially get what we think we need at that moment, there still is a lot out there to accomplish. So.
I'll add that one of the things that sometimes happens when we do think that change is linear, like all the research science says that change is non-linear, it's cyclical, it's spiral, it's messy, and if it actually were linear, more people would stick to their diet, or more people would keep consistently working on their book. And the misconception that change actually happens linearly, what I think it does for people is they have their hand hovering over the abort button, like abort, it's like, oh, this didn't happen quick enough. Well, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. And so just watch, like, is your hand hovering in this place because you hold these expectations? And you talked about the role of finding your own way. And the word I use for that is alignment, like really being in alignment with your own path. And I think in order to be able to do that, mindfulness is really key for it. A good friend of mine, Christopher Carter, he's a musician and businessman and just all around awesome individual. He talks about how his mindfulness practice helps him tell the difference between signals and static. What's a signal and what's static? And mindfulness, meditation is just one pathway for mindfulness, but we're talking about the process of actually being in the moment and being able to find, is that just someone else's thought? Is that just something I've heard before, that this should be this way? Or is it really authentic to me? And the only way to really do that, I believe, is through cultivating that attunement to, is this aligned for me?
Cool. So we're really getting towards the end of the causality, but one of the major causes that we have, we don't even realize, you mentioned Twitter, you mentioned Facebook, social media, but how does the media affect our scarcity mindset? What are we being programmed? What do you see?
I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, I think it feeds, I think it's, I think it's our relationship to it in the moment that is the most important thing to understand. I think Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, they're all wonderful tools, and I think that they're great community builders and a wonderful way to stay in touch. And I see so many exciting things happening from a marketing and networking standpoint that couldn't happen before these were out. So I think there's so many great benefits. Unfortunately, what I see a lot of is addiction. Constant, I really think, I don't know if the addiction groups are out there yet for them, but I said I was dealing with it in a coaching session today, and we had to actually step back and create some guiding principles for how she was going to be with Instagram and Twitter, so that she could get back to a place of groundedness and use these tools in a way that could support her and not drive her insane. I think it wakes up the compare and despair to no end in this business, because it's so easy to see what other people are doing. That can be inspiring, but it can also, if you're not feeling so hot about how if the scarcity is present, then it can really shine that light on the monster. So I think that you got to really check in, and I do this too, with like, what, how am I feeling right now as I'm on Facebook? Am I, is this making me sad? Am I excited? Is this inspiring me to go create my own web series, or is this just making me feel crappy because I haven't done it yet, And I think there are many solutions for it. I mentioned one of them, but I think it's important to just first get real with, like, what is my relationship to whichever, social media thing is your thing. And I think it can be a wonderful tool for growing your business, but we got to watch it closely.
Another element adding on to this is that it actually physically hijacks your brain. So if you think about, this is the first time in history that you can, within a 3-minute span, know so much about everything and everyone. And our brain isn't wired for that yet. In fact, there's a golden number. It's around 110 is the number of people you can keep in your mind to know before you start compartmentalizing. Like, my friends from college, my friends from this project that I did, my family in Idaho. Like, you start to compartmentalize because literally our brain is not wired yet, not ready yet to handle this many connections. And we evolved for thousands of years for things like comparing ourselves, for things like ruminating, for things like gossiping, because that used to be how news spread. So if you take the fact that we're wired for this, what used to be helpful tendency, but now you have access to more and more information, it literally can physically hijack your brain in a way that's not useful, that's not life enhancing. And so I'm not saying don't touch social media or anything like that, but know that, because what happens is you get second degree judgment of yourself, like you're judging someone else and then you're judging yourself for the fact that you should know better, and you're judging yourself about that. So having a little bit of compassion, going, it makes sense that I want to know what everyone is doing. That was really helpful thousands of years ago, but it's not what's going to be life enhancing and on a physical level.
Guys, anything about how the media affects our scarcity mindset?
I mean, I think, for actors, there's, this, we see it in, these shows at 7 o'clock or 7:30. Not that any of us watch them, but, but there's this sense that suddenly, somebody has skyrocketed, or somebody has reached a level of almost hubris where they're living on this whole other plane. And, and working with many of those people, it's not really true, and they have just as many issues as everybody else. But it constantly puts this, like, that there's this other stratosphere that's unattainable. And it must trigger some kind of chemical because it's selling. But it's really, and I think what you said about seeing, like, how is that making you feel when you're watching that stuff? And to really monitor that, because it can be kind of addictive, but it can also leave you feeling pretty crappy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, David? Anything you'd like to add there?
Well, I would just say, like, with the financial news, because again, everything is so available and so present, you do have to be very careful that it doesn't just depress you, because all you ever hear is that you're supposed to have, $7 zillion by the time you're 40, or you're going to be eating cat food and living in a cardboard box, and all of that. So, take it with a grain of salt. The other thing to be very careful about with it is, you've probably all heard of this sort of herd mentality that they have on Wall Street, where everybody kind of follows the same path. And they found that actually really works against you. And I think one of our strengths as artists is that we can be counterintuitive, and we can think in ways that are different than the way other people think. And you can take that same approach when you start looking at the financial elements in your life, because that's really going to serve you. I mean, again, to go back to the investment club, we all were putting in like $25 a month just to keep it really low. We put in a few $1,000s before we disbanded. And when we disbanded and took our money out, those of us that had been in the club made about a 46% profit off of the money that we put in. And for a bunch of artists, that's really good. And that's a lot better than the people on Wall Street are doing. So but we trusted our instincts, and that was kind of before there was a lot of really available internet and Facebook and all that other stuff. So yeah, just be careful. Use it as a tool, but maybe use it as a tool to see how you can think differently than everybody else is thinking, at least when it comes to the financial side of things.
Can I add to that? I teach over at Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB, and there's a lot of comedy writers over there and performers. And one of the things that I've seen is, Twitter, and these are places now where you can really find your voice as a writer and get work. So I think that if you can find a positive, healthy relationship with these tools, it can be a way to really use your authentic voice as a creative human being. But I think it is making sure you understand where that fine line is of all of a sudden am I saying what they want me to say, or how many people have seen this, versus really feeling proud of what you put out there and then let it go and go back to your work.
All right, cool. So we've gotten a sense now, I think, of where the scarcity mindset comes from. So let's look at the elements of what it is within us. We've talked just a little bit about how it makes us feel, but let's cover some of the real hot buttons of what it's comprised of. And let's start with fear of success.
You're saying what is fear of success?
Well, like how things that you mentioned too, that somebody got a bunch of money and said like, oh crap, let's get rid of this. I don't know if you said crap, but I did. Got to get rid of this. Why? Why? What's this fear of success behind it?
I don't know exactly the answer to that, but I think it's important to know that what is fear of success? From my point of view, it's a series of thoughts, or a mindset. It's where you leave kind of the present moment and you go, if this happens, then something bad might happen to me, blah blah blah. And it's just a series of thoughts. And I think if we can fear of success is it's a series of thoughts that we get lost in and indulge in. And the game is really to catch once that series of thoughts begins and come back to right now. Because when you're really engaged with what's in front of you, there's no time to indulge in problems. Like problems don't even exist once you're really engaged. And so I think that's part of the way out of the fear of success. But let's hear from the smart people. You guys.
Yeah. There's that Marianne Williamson quote, our greatest fear is not that we are, I'm not going to do the whole thing for you, but our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, it's, that we're powerful beyond measure.
Yeah.
And it is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. And I think that, in my mind, this fear of success is a momentary lapse of remembering that we are a part of something much bigger and greater than just ourselves and our thoughts. And so for me, when I remember that, it's not about being up here and saying something magical that you guys, that I'm being, whatever it is, but it's like, I'm here to be of service to you. And how can I do that? The minute I go to a place of remembering the whole, I get out of my you have to do it right, perfectionist thinking and wanting to, be the best or whatever it may be, and move into we're all the same actually, and we're all just trying to bozos on the bus, and so I think that's, for me, fear of success really boils down to losing sight of the whole and our contribution and place in the bigger picture.
I think that one of the things that's really challenging about fear of success or fear of failure or any of these things is that most of the time they're entirely unconscious. Like if you're actually really conscious of how you're acting out your fear of success, I'd be like, good on you, because most people don't. Meaning if I were to say like, hey, would you like to succeed? You go, yeah, of course I'd like to succeed. Who doesn't want to succeed? So it's a challenge because it's an unconscious thing. And it's an unconscious thing that you probably will never, ever fully get rid of. Because if you think about what is fear, fear is just something that's supposed to help you move away from something that might harm you. So if I were to able to, turn off the part of your brain that triggers the fear response, you would be walking down a dark alley and not really thinking anything of it, right? So we want to hold on to our fear. The fear isn't the problem. It's what do you do with the fear? And how do you look at the fact that, like, I love my fear of success. I really do. I love that little part of myself. I don't act from that place, but I say, hi, I literally talk to that part of myself and say, hi, thanks for pointing out like all the trillion ways that I could totally mess this up right now. I really appreciate your feedback, but I'm not, and I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And then that part of your brain goes, oh, okay, we're okay. And then a minute later, it's like, are you sure? And we go, yeah, no, really, I'm okay. Like, we were just talking before we came on, and Melissa said, do you feel nervous before you do these things? And I'm like, yeah. And if I didn't feel nervous before I got up in front of a group of people and shared what I'm passionate about, then I would probably know that it's time to get out of this industry. Because fear is normal, and fear is what we evolved to do. Fear shows you that you care. And so at the end of the day, like, we're wired to feel these ways. And so earlier you said, how can we get rid of scarcity mindset? And I would say you can't. You can't ever fully get rid of these things, nor would you want to, because you wouldn't be human. But the question is what do you do with it? And if you only have a hammer, then you treat everything like a nail. And so you put the same approach to this as you do with everything else. But the more tools you have in your toolkit to be able to talk to your fear, talk to your scarcity mindset, work with your emotions, set your goals, that's really what it's all about. It's not about getting rid of this arbitrary, unconscious thing that at any given point could just like hijack your brain.
So let's get into some of the guilt that is associated with our calling in particular. I had a friend yesterday that was talking to me, and her mother-in-law said to her, why do you have to dream so big? Like that would just solve all of her problems if she didn't have such grandiose urges. So we get fed it from a lot of different people, from a lot of different sources, but specifically with this calling of acting, what do you think about worthiness and how guilt sort of feeds our scarcity mindset?
Well, I'm Jewish. I'll take that one.
There you go. I'm Catholic, so I might counterbalance.
Awesome. You'll hear the same thing from either side. But I mean, I have the same answer as I did, which is, what is guilt? Guilt is a series of thoughts, and it occurs when you're not engaged with what's in front of you. And I think it's, I loved what you said, that it's all of this. I would assume that your thoughts are never going to improve, and your emotions are never going to get better. And then, if you assume that to be true, then, and I guess you'll hear my version towards the end of like, well, then what do you do? Because for me, I've tried to improve my thoughts, and and I can say something over and over to myself, but like the underlying thing is because you're not that. So I think that'll be my big reveal is what do you do with those thoughts and sensations that are kind of hardwired in. But it doesn't mean they have to run us, and it doesn't mean that it has to dictate how successful or how we operate into the world. But I think just to recognize that they're there is valuable.
Well, I know in my career, whenever I've had one of those pits of despair, it's usually the darkness right before the dawn. I mean, you guys can probably vouch for that too, right? That when you get to this point where you're like, nothing else can happen. I can't do anything else. This is it, you know? And that is the scarcity mindset. That really usually motivates me, or something else is just about to crest. The next wave is coming. And it's reminding me, like the universe and its spiraling, non-linear progression is reminding me that I should be really grateful for the next thing that's on its way. So sometimes, you know, we talk about how it points the way towards when you know what you don't have, you absolutely know what you want. Yeah.
And to add on to what is guilt, so yes, guilt is an emotion that you feel. Guilt is I'll back up to say anything that you experience today, any emotion you experience today, is here because it evolved and it survived for thousands of years. So it's like, what's the evolutionary role of guilt? We talked about fear, it's to protect you. Well, guilt evolved to enable you to feel bad when you caused harm to someone else so you could make amends. So we didn't run around as like cavemen and women and just like hit each other all the time, right? Like, oh, I feel bad. Oh, I hurt you. Like, I feel guilty. Let me do something about it. We weren't meant to feel guilt chronically, also Jewish, right? So like chronic guilt of like, you know, do you not love your mother? Do you know, like, should you feel guilty for the success that you have? So it's really important if you do feel that guilt or you feel like you're being guilted by other people to recognize that this emotion is supposed to be something that alerts you like, hey, I might be causing harm. If I am, let me do something about it. And if I'm not, let it go. So if Melissa feels guilty that she just got some gig or she's given this opportunity and she's feeling guilty about it, it's like she should ask herself, am I actually causing harm? Can I take responsibility for how someone else feels? No, it's someone else's feeling. And so then really letting it go, because again, we weren't meant to experience guilt for more than 90 seconds at a time. It's like, oh, causing harm, do something about it, then let it go.
Great.
Yeah, I just want to tack on. I think guilt and shame kind of comes up with guilt. If we don't look at that, I find it's virtually impossible to set your true goals, you know, and move towards what it is that you want, you know, because there's some piece of you that is not accepting, you know, how things are or what happened in the past, and I think that. There will probably move into ways to get to acceptance, but I think that is, from what I experience, it holds us back from actually taking risks. And, you know, I don't think it's actually between success and failure. I think it's actually about, you know, taking risks and going for success or risking nothing and being, you know, quite certain of mediocrity. And I think I don't know that any of us want mediocrity. I don't, I mean, but, like, do you want to be
vanilla?
Yeah, you know, but I think it's important. Like, most of us want to go for it, but the guilt and the shame could really paralyze us from being able to see what's possible. Again, going back to possibilities and being able to know what your choices are. So,
yeah. And just last thing about this monster. What are the self-sabotage triggers of the scarcity mindset? How do we take ourselves off our path, even when we've had some success, you know, and then we feel this imbalance from it? What are the ways in which we self-sabotage through this scarcity mindset and hold ourselves back?
I think that self-sabotage comes down to vulnerability. So if you can become really good at knowing your own feeling of vulnerability, because we usually, again, we hit the abort button too quickly, or we don't put in the effort, or we will, again, just pull the plug on things a little too early, because that self-sabotage can be an element of like feeling vulnerable. So if I get my hopes up, then I can also be let down. So if I just like say like, oh, I don't really care, or, you know, oh yeah, whatever, that didn't mean that wasn't that big of a deal, and you don't really put your heart in it, and you don't commit to it, and you don't invest in it, and that can become a form of self-sabotage, because the opposite can be, I have to feel a little vulnerable. Like, I'm really putting my heart into this. I really want this. And finding that balance, I think, is kind of important.
Anyone else?
I would just say, for the financial point of view, you know, one of the biggest things we do is say, as artists, we we shouldn't understand this. We shouldn't understand how finances work. It's beyond us. It's something that we can't understand, which is ridiculous. You absolutely can understand it probably better than the people who are doing it because you're more creative than they are. And the other thing is what I was talking about earlier is just having this idea of if I don't understand all of it right now, I can't do anything. And that's another thing that you really have to work on getting away from. I had someone in one of my classes say, you know, it sounds like it's so much work, and, you know, when I'm preparing for a role, I just don't have time to do anything else. And I said, well, wait a minute, you're cleaning your house and you're doing your laundry, aren't you, whether you're in rehearsals or not? And granted, when you're in rehearsals, maybe you're doing it not as efficiently or as often as you maybe would do when you're not, but you're still doing it. So just if you sort of look at that element of your life, not as this big, scary thing that's out there, but just something that you can sort of start integrating into your life to help you do the other things that you want, set the goals that you want, and give you that freedom, I think that will do a lot to get you away from like putting that sabotage in front of you.
I think we get too caught up in how things are going to happen before we get clear enough about what we really want. And again, I'm going to go back to getting really clear and specific. There's this New Yorker cartoon where there are two doors. One is marked heaven and the other one is marked how to get to heaven, and everybody's standing in line for the how to get to heaven one. The how, I'm sure you could give us the science behind like why that brings us such comfort, you know, to know how things are going to play out. And that's just not a part of the deal, I think, in this industry. And if we get too attached to needing that, I see that, you know, we separate out goal setting versus goal getting, which is the how you're going to get your goal. So I see that saboteur of really needing to know exactly how I'm going to get my goal before I even get exactly clear about what is it I want. And you know, and then the other one really quickly, I think I see so much, it's like that whack-a-mole thing, you know, at the amusement park, this like constant like reaction mode. And I think we need to move out of being too reactive and get to a place of finding out how can I be proactive? What does it mean for me to wake up every day and work towards my goals and work on my business, regardless of who's calling you in for something or, you know, what is coming your way. That stuff gets to be, you know, icing on the cake, so to speak. But no matter what, you have a plan for how you're going to go to work every day for your career. And I think that's, when we can get there, that's a sense of empowerment that just naturally, you know, puts that scarcity at bay for a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am feeling a lot saner about my mental condition. I don't know about you guys. I feel more relaxed already. So let's just everybody take a nice cleansing breath. Come on. And now we are going to shift to some solution orientation and talk about what is the abundance mindset. Maybe we should take one more cleansing breath.
I think also it's hard to define that without actually defining what is abundance. So it's like, what is abundance, and then what's abundance mindset? And my favorite definitions or descriptions, it's like having exactly what you need when you need it, is one way of thinking of abundance, right? And so sometimes you can look back and say, I'm abundant right now. So having your own measure of what that is, whether it be a specific goal and really knowing what it is, because what happens is as human beings, we're also wired to adapt. So wherever you know, like if I were to ask you 5 years ago, if I were to tell you this is where you'd be in your life, how would you feel? And most of us would be like, wow, yeah, I'd take that. But how satisfied are you really with where you're at in your life right now? And the reason for that is because we evolved to adapt and to constantly have this desire, this duality between I want to be comfortable and I want to be safe and I want to be in control of everything, to I want novelty and I want to grow and I want more and I want more and I want more. And so the ability to define it for yourself is really important, knowing that your comfort zone is always going to keep expanding. So wherever you get to, you're going to want more. And most of the time, we just end up spinning our wheels, or we get on this treadmill where we just keep working harder without ever really allowing ourselves to be satisfied with where we have been and where we are, and then to say, now here's what I want. So don't know if I answered your question. But.
Yeah, it did. One of the best pieces of coaching advice I ever got in my career was somebody told me, you always already know everyone you need to know in order to get what you want. And if you really get into the scarcity mindset and start to feel the feelings and you think about that, who do I know? Who do I know that can help me right now? And I think if you guys ask yourselves that question, you do know the people that can help you. I mean, just the panelists right here all offer these services to you, just a little plug for you guys. But yeah, you've met them all here tonight. So, and who in your little pool of 110 people, right, before you categorize, are some pretty influential people for you in your career. So that's one thing you can look at. You always have everything you need right then and there if you really look at it. Yeah. What else, guys? Abundance. The abundance mindset. Let's define it.
Well, for me, I don't know what the abundance mindset is, actually. Sorry. But it's almost, from my point of view, it's almost like the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset are kind of two sides of a coin that maybe shouldn't even be dealt with at all. I felt abundant, when we all took a deep breath, and it kind of just made us all feel like we were really here. From my point of view, just what I found to work for me is I don't know how to have an abundant mindset. I can think of things to say to myself, but if I take a deep breath and engage with what's actually here, it's like abundance or scarcity don't even exist.
Well, they're binaries. We've talked about that before in some of these workshops. Binaries are the love-hate, the two things that exist simultaneously, and it gives you your gray area, and you can also think of them as two sides of the same coin. Without knowing what scarcity is, you can't know what abundance is. Without knowing what abundance is, you can't know what scarcity is. So just the flip side of the coin of what we've been talking about.
Yeah. I think I love, everything I'm hearing, and I think... for me, abundance, the word that comes up is hope, and I think that not so much in the sort of sense of like positive thinking, I think it's easy to jump to like, just be positive and then you'll feel abundant, and I that doesn't work for me. Yeah. For me, I have to get out of
It's because you're not trying hard enough.
Do or do not. Yes. There is no try.
But I think I feel abundant, and what I observe, in working with others, especially in this industry, is when we get out of our head and into our heart and connect. And that's actually, I really believe that our goals come from in here. That we're not going to think our way to the next goal, and that usually can wake up the scarcity. It's the thought, and it's actually like when we can connect to our heart. It's amazing when we drop in, the answer's right there. It's beautiful. So.
I just want to also, maybe if we're thinking of them on a spectrum, like if you think of the definition of scarcity as there's not enough. And so if you go to the other extreme, the abundance is there's plenty to go around, right? So I know that we're talking about like how do we actually define it, and just thought of it right now. It's like, okay, there isn't enough to go around, to there's enough for everybody, and there's plenty, right? Plentiful, that relates to hope and all these other things, which again can be challenging if you have the scarcity mindset and you go on social media, or you go, and then that puts us in comparison mode because, well, here was this little tiny pool of resources or funds or investors, and suddenly they're all eaten up, or like we all got to get them, as opposed to there's plenty to go around. There's so much abundance in this world, and it's everyone has their own unique way of tapping it.
Well, there was one thing that you said, Amelia, in the resiliency panel that I kind of adapted. It's when we hear about our friends that get these big gigs and they get these good jobs, and we go, like, oh no, that's one thing I can't get, like, damn it, But you said, universe, I'll have what they're having, And it's a really simple thing that when your heart cinches out of jealousy, you could just say, hey, I'll have some of that. Yeah.
And if you take on the abundance mindset, you can do that, because it's like, imagine you go into a restaurant and you sit down and you see the people next to you and they are having this meal that looks really great. You're like, oh, I wish I could have that. I'm not good enough to get that. What are they doing to get that? You would just be like, no, waiter, I'll have what they're having, right? You'd be like, I'll have that. And that's the abundance mindset. It's like, universe, I'll have what they're having, because them showing you that thing and your heart lining up going, wow, I didn't even realize I wanted a gig that pays that or gives these kind of traveling opportunities. But now I do. Now I see I want that. So universe, I'll have that.
Yeah.
I just want to say really quickly, I used to work in casting, and I just want to bring this up because there is definitively a supply and demand thing going on in this industry, and it can feel like it's really out of whack. There's so many more of you down here than there are of them up there, and it can lead you to feeling like you're not on equal footing with, who your colleagues, the casting directors, the writers, the producers, and I think that's where we want to get to, is really believing, again, coming back to the worthiness of this win-win mentality, that what you have to offer and bring to the table is just as valuable as what they have for you. And when we can get to that place, and the good news is that's totally in your control. Like, you can go work with people to help you on that, and you can. This is just our job, I think, to feel worthy enough to take that meeting and own our 2 minutes in the room with that casting director, and that makes all the difference in how you show up. So, yeah.
And also, you can attest to this. Like, the casting directors, like, they want you to win. They want you to be the one. Like, they don't want you not to be the one. If you're the one, then their job is done.
You make them look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked about one of the tools we've mentioned so far is just checking in with yourself. We really, I have enjoyed so much hearing about the ways we monitor our thoughts and get these feelings in, and learning that we're not alone in having them. And it's very human. But what are some of the other tools that can help us shift to an abundance mindset?
I would say have mentors. This is also the first time in history where we have so little apprenticeship. There used to be so much mentoring that was woven into our social constructs. So if you find yourself, first step is you have to know your own mindset and know your own mind chatter and go through that. But then who are the people who are doing it well, who seem to be flowing abundance? Interview them. How do you see this thing? What are your belief systems about money? Read books about people who have different mindsets than you do, so that you can learn and have that mentoring or that positive influence, especially when you understand that your viewpoint is just one viewpoint. And you could use all the people in the room, be like, how do you see this? And how do you see this? And what are your belief systems? And then you can think of it as a fitting room. Try them on, right? Money doesn't go on trees. How does that one feel? Not so good. Money has always showed up exactly when I needed it. I've always had exactly when I needed it. I like that. That feels good. Put that in your pocket, right? So the more options you have, the more you can play with them.
Yeah.
I got one thing, which is when something good happens, when you get a residual check, when anything happens that's going in the direction you want, I found just a little mantra of going, more of that. I'll take more of that.
Yeah,
I guess
really?
that would be my abundant mindset.
Well,
it's
really
just to go, I'll more, yes.
Celebrating the small triumphs. Oftentimes you get up under 5 and you feel like, well, it's just an under 5. It's not a guest star. Hey, it's an under 5. You could call your friends and have them come over and watch you. Have a glass of wine and say, yay, I did something. Celebrating each little milestone, even getting new headshots. You should feel good about yourself doing something instead of, really, that it's very important. We tend to compare and not say, oh, I've made something of myself, because we have this finish line in our business of stardom. A lot of people put at the end of our road, or being a household name. But there's so many wonderful things. You could succeed at taking a class that opened you up to something that you were uncomfortable with, and really need to celebrate that you opened that facet of yourself. And just like you said with this audition, you're still remembering it. You got a chuckle out of some audition you didn't even want to, do, but you did it, and it was celebratory, very fun. So
One other thing I would say is just take the action, do it, because so much we sit back and we say, gee, I really should try to take care of this. I really should try to do this. I should, maybe start looking into this. Do it. Just do it. Take the step to do it. What's the worst that you find out, oh, I don't like this, it's not right for me? You'll learn something about it, and you'll actually be making a positive step towards getting the things that you want and are meaningful to you that you can then celebrate.
I just want to really quickly add on to that. I'll take some more because there's a really great scarcity mindset teaching that can come from it. So it's really important when the little things happen. My motto is thank you, universe, we'll take some more. And I also don't even say I'll take some more. I say we'll take some more, because that really reminds me, it's like not just me having abundance. It's like we'll all take some more, right? There's so much to go around. So I see it's so important to do that with the little things. And sometimes people have a harder time doing it with the big things. It's like, wow, like this big thing came along, and then it's, then people just feel like they have to be grateful for that. But being able to say, wow, thank you, universe, I'll take even more, is really important. Because sometimes if you do have a scarcity mindset, when that big thing does happen, it's like, okay, I did this thing, and then it's like, oh, I can't do it. Can I do that again? I don't know. As opposed to really saying like, great, and we'll take some more. So big and small, it's so important to make that mantra kind of ingrained in there.
Well, you bring up a fabulous tool, gratitude. Let's talk about how gratitude has a role in abundance.
Oh, no, that was great. I was so into what you said. I mean, you want to talk about gratitude?
Well, gratitude's good.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I do think there's a value in being, just the fact that we're in this room, there's a level of abundance compared to how a lot of people on the planet are living right now. And we should really be grateful for that. We can even the fact that we can have a discussion about a scarcity mindset is abundant. So I think it's just, we can get so caught up in here, but it's like we're doing better than a lot of people, and we should be very grateful.
I think what I love about, there are times where, I just don't want to, make my list of gratitudes, and I want to be in my pity party, and it's just not, I know I should, and all of that. What it does is it gets us out of our own, little bubble, and I think that that's ultimately where we want to be, and to actually take a moment and take stock in what we do have, it flips it immediately. So one of the things I love about, just to bank on what you were saying, with just sort of noticing what your different options are. I like to do this quick little thing called the flip, and you can do it on the subway, in your head. You can do it, when you're laying down in bed. You can do it anywhere, right before an audition, and whatever that current thought is. Identify it, like actually write it down, acknowledge what it is, I'm too scared to try, right, whatever it may be, and write it on one side of a page, current thought, try not to judge it, and then flip it, and get the other side. And the key is you don't have to believe the flip at all to identify it. You just want to find out what it is. And I was doing this the other day, and this girl came up with, I love myself enough to risk failure. Nice. And the minute she said that, we both, wow, like, okay, so now you have the option, and again, giving yourself permission not to have to believe it 100% and be this positive thinking person actually makes room for there to be some truth in that flip statement. And that may be all you need, just that little sliver to kind of get back into action like you were talking about. And the one other thing I wanted to say, if we have time, is there's this great Mark Twain quote, first thing in the morning, eat a frog, and the rest of the day is easy. do the harder thing first. It really, like, eat the frog. I'm in love with this because I think it's so gratifying to do the thing again, take that risk and do the thing that we've been putting off or procrastinating and build up that sense of accomplishment, because we can do a lot more than we actually think sometimes.
Speaking of what we think, let's talk about visualization as a tool for abundance. How does that work?
It works different than most people think it does. A lot of what the secret or the law of attraction gets people wanting to think about to be more abundant is visualizing the outcome. And research shows is that if you just visualize the outcome, it actually works against you. So they actually did a study where one group of people, is a weight loss study, where one group of people visualized themselves at meeting their goal, buying new clothing, feeling so great. And the other group visualized the process of getting there, getting themselves to the gym, moving, and it makes sense that, that would be an important part of it. What they actually found is that the group that visualized the outcome gained weight at the end of the study compared to those who visualized the process. So in terms of visualizing abundance, it works different than we usually think we do. When people think like, oh, visualize yourself having all the money or getting these things, it's important to have that, as Betsy said, is what your goal is, where you're going. However, it's not enough, because what happens is your brain then can very quickly go, well, but that's not here yet. So it's important to have both, that strong desire for what you want and being grateful for what you have in the moment, but then also visualizing the process is important, because at the end of the day, we're just mammals, you and me, baby, and nothing, that song? It's really dead on, because we're animals and we are actually wired to want to act to get a reward. And what that study found was that those who visualized themselves already having that thing basically celebrated in their mind. And their brain was like, well, why do the work? We already feel good. So so when you say visualizing abundance, it's also important to not just visualize the outcome, but break it down. Do a goal setting process of the step-by-step process of getting you there, and then you're going to get a lot of bang for your visualizing buck.
So that's why everybody in the cartoon is in the how to get to heaven line.
You want to stand in the place you want to be and work backwards from there. You can't just stand there and wait. You got to actually work backwards. And I see so much excitement and motivation. We don't just set a 1-year goal. We actually set the 9, the 6, the 3, and then the 1. And then the 1-month goal, you can actually feel it feels doable. And then you come up with your action plan for that. So it's about being able to see the process. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and just a couple other bullet points before we move into the Q&A. So if you got a couple more minutes to put any... Oh, no, she's already got it? Okay. So we're just going to... You want to just move into the Q&A right now? Yeah, we're at time. Oh, okay. All right, cool. So we're rounding home. I'm sorry I put 9:30 in my head as the end time. So we'd just like to say thank you to everybody here today. I hope that you guys got some sense of where you're coming from and where you're headed. And we thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your night.